So do you feel like you're raising a strong, confident young man?
To the death of me, but yes.
Strong Like a Mother podcast with Cherie and Jada. We're doing your best. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect.
Sometimes too strong. No, but we work really hard to teach those skills. Because at the end of the day, you have to remember that they're going to fly the nest one day, and they're going to have to stand on their own 2 feet, right? We can only hope that they fly the nest one day. And so, yeah, I mean, I think, we work really hard to instill good decision making.
Yeah.
And I want him to feel like he can speak his mind and, really just be his own little person. Because really, when I give him that freedom, even though sometimes I got to throttle it a little bit, like, okay, we don't say that, or that's not, appropriate, or whatever. I think it builds those skills much earlier when you encourage that. What about y'all?
I think you get to a point where they're little and you're like, I can't wait for them to talk. And you're like, I can't wait for you to stop talking. But we definitely encourage, please use your words. Mm-hmm. Tell us how you're feeling. I think in getting to that place where you can speak when you need to convey how you're feeling in the right manner, which, that takes time, it takes growth to get to that place.
It does.
But please, use your words for us to help you. Mm-hmm. It's just the biggest thing in that you can feel the way you feel. Mm-hmm. Dylan, we've never had to coax that. We usually it's that other thing like, can you not share so much? But especially because I have older girls. I have high school and very soon to be high school and middle school at the same time.
Yeah.
That is the time where they don't want to share as much with you.
Yeah.
And, though it's been a while, I do remember. And so some things you do, they're just, for our peers, but it is important that you can, when the time requires it, for you to use your words, for you to speak so that you don't stifle that kind of stuff in.
Yeah.
Because that's more harmful than good to hold all that in that you can, speak and, get help if needed or, stand up for yourself, whatever it is, use your words.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And really, when you encourage it from a young age, they become so articulate at it.
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse. I really do think our generation of parents, we're doing things a little different, you know, which I think is a great thing. And I think that probably every generation, you take, your life experiences and you do things a little bit different. But every time I see like one of my mom friends and their child comes and is expressing themselves and can articulate their feelings or whatever, that's a skill.
Yeah.
That is a skill that I think some adults don't have mastered. Being able to go, that made me feel nervous or that made me feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I didn't like that. I think that things like that maybe previously got kind of like brushed under the rug or maybe just wasn't really talked about. But we encourage it because I want him to, I want you to communicate with me. If something's wrong, if somebody made you feel off, if something made you feel really good, I want you to be able to express that because at the end of the day, those communication skills become very, very important as an adult. Not that they're not now, they are, but I think the older you get, the more important they get. You know?
I think the benefit always comes to the people who are more articulate and can express themselves. And I think growing up, feelings, I mean, let's be honest, I don't think that they were valued to the extent that we do, but now we see maybe some of the harm that may have done to us.
Yeah.
Not thinking that our feelings were valued or that that's something that we should share.
Yeah.
That you keep those to yourself kind of thing. I want you to share them with me so we can work through and process those things that I understand you feel that way. Let's talk about it. What made you get, kind of little in-home therapy or whatever, but that your feelings are valid and that we are going to feel all the feelings, and it's okay to talk about all of them. There are no feelings that we can't discuss.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're going to be frustrated with us. We're not going to use that word with me, but, we can talk about it that I'm not making you happy in this moment.
Yeah.
And that is okay. I, as a mom, have to do that. But we have those conversations.
Yeah.
And I think, older people, my aunts or my mom or whatever, may think that that's funny that these are the conversations I'm having with my 5-year-old.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be honest with her. Like, you're not going to be happy with me all the time. I say it to my teenager, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I do encourage open communication so we can discuss these things. I'm going to tell you what led me to this decision.
Yeah.
And no matter what you say, it's probably not going to change that. I'm going to let you know so you can process it as you need to.
Yeah.
And then, if I ask for feedback, you give it, because I think that's the boundary with encouraging the free speech.
Yeah.
That is free within boundaries, within a parent-kid relationship, that you can say some things, but, other things you got to know that it does cross the barrier of disrespect, respect.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's definitely a boundary there that I want you to feel free to express yourself, but you're not going to get disrespectful with me either.
Yeah, there's a courteous way to say it. Yeah.
Well, and we talk a lot about, too, sometimes I have to say no. It's not that I want to say no, but as your mom, it's my job to keep you safe.
Yeah.
It's my job to, make sure that you grow up to be healthy and strong. And sometimes you have to say no. You can't have a pack of Starburst after, you just ate chips and then also ask for a sucker. I have to say no. There has to be a boundary.
Right.
And it's for your own good because, as we've learned from experience, when you eat all of those things, your stomach's going to hurt.
Yeah.
And so I think I talk about whenever we're in those moments, especially that parent-child relationship of, do you remember that time when we did eat all of that and your tummy was really hurting you? Do you remember that? And bring that back up. And I'm like, I want what's best for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have to say no because I don't want your tummy to hurt or whatever. And so I try to explain why I'm saying no. I think I'm that person. I can get on board with a lot of things. If you don't explain to me why it's important or why it's not important or, whatever it is, it's really hard for me to get on board with it. So I'm very big on, let me explain the why, because I know that that's how my brain works and how I operate. And so I'm sometimes maybe over-explain, but that's a key thing that I find makes a big difference and usually gives them a moment to bring the temper down, as you're explaining it, this is why I understand you're not happy and you don't have to like it, but this is what we're going to do. And a lot of times just that alone brings things down a notch.
Yeah. We try to always do the why. I think sometimes the timing of when our kids require a why, they're not reading the room, which is your friendly reminder that they're kids and that you do not treat them as adults, that they haven't, everything hasn't been fully polished. They're still growing. They're still, we had a situation over this weekend where, we had to tell Peyton, hey, we were in 2 separate cars. Hey, please go get in your dad's truck. And she's looking at us in confusion as to what was going on. And I'm like, no, go. And we having to keep and I'm like, just do what we're saying.
Yeah.
But it's that feeling that you're owed an explanation in this moment was just off place. And I think because it went so far that then my tone kind of changed, I think upset her. But it's do know that our intentions are never to do anything to hurt or harm you.
Yeah.
That there is a reason, and that maybe this isn't the time that you're going to get the why, but I don't mind explaining to you. Just know this wasn't the particular moment to almost demand it of me, you know? And I think that sometimes like the environment that I grow up into is like, do what I say. I don't have to explain myself.
Yeah.
So I see that mesh as to why sometimes that's needed. And then sometimes it's like, it's not that I can't explain it. I'm just not going to explain it to you when you want it, which is just hard because those gray areas are just hard for kids to process.
Yeah. And I think a lot about too, when I'm explaining things, I don't know if you've ever heard the analogy of like why certain information is like kept from children.
Yeah.
And how, you know, they use traveling as the analogy here, and the dad packs the suitcase, and you know, he's going to say, they're getting on the train and, oh, well, you carry the suitcase. Well, my suitcase is much heavier than your suitcase.
Yeah.
And as children, you have to know, and while I'm very open, honest, I don't want to lie to you. I want you to be informed as best as you can. Some information is just too heavy for children. And they use that suitcase analogy of like, well, I wouldn't give you my suitcase because at the end of the day, like, you're not ready for it.
Yeah.
You're not ready for that information yet. You know, especially when you start to get to these sensitive topics.
Oh,
which happen a lot earlier than I think most of us are ready for.
Yes.
You know, where you're having to have conversations about, you know, body parts, or just, you know, interacting maybe with the opposite sex, or, you know, or same sex. I mean, it goes across a lot of lines, and just having that I think about that all the time, is like, I want to be honest with you, but sometimes the information is too heavy for you.
Yeah, I think that having your first kid is just such a guinea pig, and I guess you know, you have one. It's the practice, and like we learn like really like how early puberty started and all this kind of stuff. And one thing I will say, my mom was really good at. She didn't really like shelter us from a lot. Mm-hmm. Some things, but not a whole lot. But she was like a straight shooter when she told us stuff.
Yeah.
And it was not always, sometimes it was, but it wasn't always like, don't do this. Like, let me give you this information so you can make an informed decision. Mm-hmm. Now, not all the time. 90% of the time, you weren't making the right decisions, but you were given this information. Mm-hmm. So you knew what you were doing. So when you do something wrong,
right,
you knew it was wrong. You knew it wasn't right. You knew this was a situation. And I think I try and do that with the girls. Is some things I'm still going to have to make the decision on your behalf, because you're just not mature enough to do that for yourself.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give you kind of like, the rope, you know, and to kind of go as far as you can. And sometimes I need to tether you back in
100%.
Because, you know, hey, you're not making the best decisions. Like, you know, kids dressing themselves, and like teenagers not wanting to iron their clothes. Like, please stop going out looking like, you know, we don't have a working iron or whatever. But then giving them that freedom to develop their sense of style, to develop express their personality, and wear something that brings them confidence. Because that's one of the biggest things. Like, you know, middle school was hard for everybody, because everybody's changing, and you don't know how to interact with people because everybody's going through those changes.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just one of those things where you're like, okay, I'm going to let you kind of find yourself as much as possible.
Within reason.
But I'm right behind you, kind of like watching and lurking, making sure you figure things out.
So my brother-in-law is a counselor, and he specializes in like play therapy, he does a lot of adolescents. And we went furniture shopping with him this past weekend and went and got something to eat. And Levi's he loves Dustin's brother. And he's jumping back and forth and like kind of like crawling behind him in the booth. And I'm like, okay, Levi, you can either sit on this side, you can sit on this side, or you can come sit next to me on either side, but we're not going to crawl behind Uncle Jesse. He's like, oh, okay, Mom, and it's such a huge compliment. Like, he doesn't have kids, but because he deals with kids and is he's always like, he tells me all the time, he's like, that's such good parenting. Like, giving them the opportunity to make a choice.
Yeah.
He's like, now you dictated what the choices were. He's like, so, but like giving him that voice to go, okay, well, I'm going to choose to sit here. So I think that's really valuable, and very much along your rope analogy of like, I'm going to give you the rope, but I've got the other end. And if I need to like reel you in a little bit, I can do that, because it is important to remember, like, I don't know where I heard this stat, but like how our brains are not fully developed until age 26.
I can believe that. I've literally said to myself, I don't think, having lived this long, I don't feel like I was a true adult till about 25.
I would have to agree with you. Like, completely. I look back at decisions that I made in my early 20s when you think but you really don't.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, that was a dumb decision. And I think for us, and I don't know if you do this or not, but I had Facebook very early on in life. And when I look back on my, Facebook reminds you what you posted each day. And when I look back and I see what I posted in like 2008, I'm like, ooh, girl, that was not a good look. And a friend of mine posted a meme that said, there is no one else I look at more disgustingly than myself on Facebook posts from my early days. And it's one of those things that you take with a grain of salt of like, gosh, like clearly I would never post anything like that now. Not that it was super offensive, but just like, why? Why did I post that? That was so stupid. But then also, I think you got to look at it from a, reframe it. Yeah. And you have to go, look how much I've grown since then.
Oh, absolutely.
And I was really, quote unquote, an adult back then, but not really,
Yeah.
I think it was, you're right. I mean, 25, 26, that's about when I think things really clicked, and it was like, okay, you had a much more firm grasp on the world.
And I think the craziest part is I was married for a few years at that point.
Same.
But I have been on Facebook since it was only, you required a college email to be on Facebook. I've been on Facebook since pretty much the beginning. But yeah, you go back and you look and you reflect on those things. And I think that's going to be the same with my kids. I can't let you live a life in this house where you're protected from everything.
Yeah.
Because that's not real.
Yeah.
That things will happen. We are faced with choices. We have to be able to make decisions. But I think the other thing to just building them up to be more empowered individuals is building them up to knowing who they are.
Yeah.
So that way you are around other people, and you get influenced by other people, but the core of who you are, what you want for yourself. And that is your foundation.
Yeah.
And, staying true to yourself, loving yourself enough that I'm not going to compromise me for somebody else.
Right.
Which is hard. It's hard through the middle school age. And then it gets a little bit scarier, honestly, knowing you're getting closer and closer to when they want to move out, or when they're like, oh, I don't think I want to go to college at home. I think I want to go, a 5-hour plane ride away.
Right.
So you're like, okay, clock's ticking. We have some more work to do. We don't think you're just quite there yet. And I think honestly, that's not really even our decision when they feel like they're there yet.
Yeah, it's not.
So I'm doing the best I can with the time I'm given.
Yeah.
Which is it's just a blink. I'm sure our parents feel the same way, but to give them room to be able to make mistakes, to find who they are and encourage them finding who they are. I think it's just one of the biggest things.
I think to that point, last week, rooming with Stacy, she made this statement, and I was like, whoa, it like hit me. And she said, you have to think about it. raising children, by the time they get to freshman year, 75% of the time that they have spent with you, that's 75% of it, because you think as they get older, they spend less and less time with you, and then they do move out. And yes, you still talk to them and you see them and whatever, but she's like, you've got this much time to make an impact in their life.
Yeah, you're no longer the primary influence. Probably, I mean, we're probably there yet with Peyton, that we're not the primary influence, because, I mean, we'll be 16 in 6 months.
Yeah.
So, it's a tough pill to swallow, but, just you do the best you can, and
that's all you can
learn more
do.
For the next one.
Yeah. And I think, no one escapes childhood without things that they, would do differently themselves. I mean, I think that's how it's supposed to work. You get older and you just go, okay, well, I want to do things differently like that. And you can, and that's the beauty of it. And I look at my siblings, and we all are very different, but we're all very the same at the same time. Like, it's so interesting because all of our core values really do line up. The core values that my parents instilled in all of us, they all are very similar. But at the same time, we are so different, you know? Yeah. I mean, we all have different takes on things that just, even though our core values are the same, we might have little outlooks. Our outlooks are a little different here and there. And so, I just think it's interesting when you're raising children, and, to me, that's a job well done. When you've raised them to have good core values, but they all turned out a little differently, and they all felt empowered to be their own person. I think that's what we all want at the end of the day.
Yeah. I'm not narcissistic to think that I want my kids to be just like me.
Yeah.
I want them to be better. I want them to have learned from the lessons that I had to learn, and then there'll be lessons your kids learn from you. Mm-hmm. And I am not also naive to think that they get that now.
Yeah.
Like, when I have to correct them and pull them back, that they understand certain things now.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a situation with Peyton this week, and, we had to have a discussion. And I was like, remember when I told you about this? Which is specifically, how you present yourself even with friends. If you think it's a private conversation on text, they're not paying their cell phone bill. You'll be mindful with those exchanges, because other parents are kind of looking.
Yeah.
And then they may frame it and push it off on you being this kid, and, to deflect from whatever that situation may be. I said, you be mindful what you're doing.
Yeah.
Watch yourself. Because your friend probably isn't going to protect you.
Yeah. 100% your friend is throwing you under the bus because they don't want to be the ones under the bus.
Right.
And, so, I mean, that just happens. I think that's happened to everybody.
And I want that to be an honest conversation. I'm not going to send you out here to think. So I'm not going to screen every text message, that you do, and maybe I should, or whatever. I just don't. I don't want to micromanage like that. Because, I mean, my parents the technology wasn't there 20 years ago.
Oh, it's so different. Yeah.
So it's different now, but I think about conversations that maybe I had with friends back then or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I'm not, she's a teenager.
Yeah.
But there are certain things, hey, listen, we're just for sure not going to do.
Yeah.
But then when you do, let me tell you what the possible consequences are if you choose to still proceed with those things.
Yeah,
and,
those choices.
So, and so she was able to reflect back. I mean, that was a conversation I think we maybe had 2 years ago.
I was about to say, you told me about this, and it's been a long time since you told me about having that conversation.
And so it's come back, and she was good. She was good in that situation, just clear. And I was like, you see what I was telling you? Because, like, I knew this.
Yeah.
I knew this would come.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want you to feel some kind of way if this happened. And so, no, in that moment when I'm telling you something, you just seem like that crazy mom.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it takes a little bit longer for it to come full circle. And I know that full circle for me with some things with my parents didn't happen to a decade or more later, where I'm like, you know what? It wasn't so bad. My sister and I were literally just having the conversation how, like, we just thought our parents were so strict and this, and they're like, they really weren't.
Yeah.
Strict. Our life was different.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we really were very fortunate in so many ways, and you couldn't see it then.
Yeah.
Now when you're responsible for your own humans or your own bills and house, it's different. You get it. I see now. I see.
Oh yeah. The bills alone, man, it puts things in perspective. I was just talking to somebody about how, having a child is expensive. Having one is expensive. Having multiple, I'm sure it just multiplies. But, the clothes, the food. I mean, Levi is eating us out of house and home right now. And I'm like, Lord have mercy. I don't want to know what it's like when he's a teenager, because I'm sure it's only going to multiply as he gets older.
I don't have boys, but I have teenage girls, and like there'll be a mound of pizza rolls on a plate.
Yeah.
And I'm like, didn't you have lunch at school?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So we have breakfast, first lunch at school, second lunch at home, and then dinner.
Yep.
So I'm just like, my goodness. But I mean, just teaching them to be able to make their own decisions.
Yeah.
You're not really making all the decisions you think that you're making. Great. You'll learn that later. But, like, I'm giving you choices.
Yeah.
And so you're good with the repercussions if you don't make the best choice for that situation.
Yeah.
You get what you get.
Yeah. I think that that's a really impactful way to parent. I'm a fan of giving the choices, but really to explain the consequences and letting them make those, maybe not bad decisions, but maybe you didn't pick the best decision,
Yeah.
And I think that that's, it's in a controlled environment.
Yeah.
I've told you what those consequences are. And yeah, I mean, I've had so many moments as an adult now that I look back and I'm like, dang, my mom was right about that,
Yeah.
And you just don't think in the moment. You're like, oh, whatever. Your teenage self, your hormones raging, your underdeveloped brain, like, know. I mean, you just don't think, and you're like, whatever. They don't know. But really, they do know.
Because they lived it. They lived the life, you know? And I have to own that I didn't appreciate when my mom told me certain things. I thought she was being mean. She was no fun. She didn't want me to have a life. And that really wasn't true. And just like that, there are things I've taken from my childhood that I've either implemented and kept, modified, or be like, we ain't doing that.
Yep.
We're not doing that around here.
My mom growing up used to tell us we were really not allowed to spend the night at very many people's homes. And back then I was just like, God, like you're so overbearing, you're so protective, whatever. And now as an adult, my mom had this famous saying, and I feel like maybe I've talked about this before on the podcast, of sleeping is a personal thing to be done at home. And it makes so much sense now, because you don't want your child to be put in a vulnerable spot with someone who you don't have complete trust in. Like Levi can go spend the night at my brother's house, at my sister's house, at, my parents, Dustin's parents, like there are plenty of places where I'm like fully confident that you're going to be safe. But as he gets older and you start seeing the friend thing happen, and it's like, unless I know your parents very intimately on a deep level that I really can put my trust in them, it makes so much sense why my mom did not let us just go to anybody's house. Like, I think I had maybe three or four friends that I was allowed to spend the night at their house, and that was in high school. That was definitely not at a young age. And we had been friends with these people, like, since I was probably like 6 or 7. Like, they were like lifelong friends. And so it is interesting that the things you take away, and it's like, okay, giving them some freedom, but it's ultimately, I look back now and I'm like, every no was just her wanting to, keep me safe.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
I mean, if I really think about it, the people I was allowed to spend the night, like go to sleepovers, like that relationship went back like another generation. It wasn't just I was friends with that girl.
Yeah.
It was like my mom or my dad grew up with that person.
Yes.
And that's how they know each other. Like our families, even though we ended up at school together, whatever, like it wasn't just, this was a school classmate and we became friends.
Yeah.
It never really worked out that way. And it was that, and that was okay. I also had like a ton of cousins.
Yeah.
So, but it's just they don't always understand that level of protection. And my God, we know way more now.
Oh my God.
Which is just scary to be putting humans out in this world. So I'm trying to set you up to be as knowledgeable and equally paranoid and equally confident at the same time. Like, be aware.
I know.
You know,
finding that balance of instilling the healthy fear in them is really hard, because you don't want them, I don't want you to be scared, but I just want you to be aware that there are bad people out there, you know?
Oh, I mean, I literally in Target or Walmart, if they've walked away and I'm like, people steal children.
Yeah.
I literally just had to say that.
Oh yeah.
Like, straight out, like, I don't even want to sugarcoat this.
Yeah.
And like, so hand on basket all times. Yeah. Don't walk away from me, or I will put you. You're gonna ride in the basket like a baby.
Buckled in.
Yeah, you're gonna ride in the basket. You know, and it's crazy because I don't want you to go out in the world and be scared, but I do need you to be like aware and attentive, and it is just not like la-di-da.
Yeah.
Run amok kind of thing. So.
I mean, nothing scares me more than human trafficking, and I think in our area, because we are on like this major interstate. Mm-hmm. It's so it's prevalent. I mean, there are moments in my life where I'm like 95% sure that person wanted to kidnap me. Like, I've personally had those.
I'm Polly Pocket size. I'm always scared.
Yes. Yes. So it's like, you know, you sit there and you're like, well, I hate to like scare you, but I also you have to know. You have to know these things. So. Yeah. Well, as we wrap up, speaking of empowered children, I have a very special Strong Mother Award for this week. I just want to give a shout out to my sister, Sarah. She is an incredible mother. She homeschools my nieces and nephew.
That is awesome.
They have 5 children total, and I look at her sometimes and I'm like, girl, I don't know how you do it, but she does it, and she does it so well. And she's such a great mom. So I just wanted to give a little special shout out to her, because she is for sure raising empowered children, especially her youngest, my youngest niece, Peyton. And the girl is a firecracker. Let me tell you, she gonna be running a company one day.
That's what I'm talking
She's
about.
She's probably the most empowered one out of all of them. But so if you miss us in between episodes,
you know where to find us. We'll be on Instagram at Strong Like a Mother Podcast. And wait, we won't see you next week.
I know. Oh, I forgot about that. So we are concluding our 20th episode.
So we're going to take a little bit of a break to love on our babies, enjoy a little bit of the summer, and we'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Bye, guys.